Hi, everybody. Welcome to video 2 this week. This one is, I hope, to be pretty short, but to me, it's really, really important. And I hate to get like all academic on you for a little bit, but I want you to know that all of the things that we're talking about in terms of making decisions about writing, revision, really thinking about the words that we're using, and using those words in a specific way, all of these are highly important and very political ideas. And so that's why we're talking today about the kind of the politics of the English language, because all of these decisions, none of these decisions are benign. All of these decisions have the possibility of, either being very uplifting and useful or damaging and harmful, and we need to be careful about how our writing does that. Right? The first is with the idea of logical fallacies. Now, under important information, there's now a big poster available for you to look at. You should take a look at it on the different logical fallacies. I'm also asking you to write to watch a short video on logical fallacies. That's just way cuter, and better production value than I could do. So I'm just going to have you watch that video on logical fallacies. But a logical fallacy is a common error in reasoning. In fact, so common that they get a name. All right. One of the most common is the ad hominem attack. An ad hominem is a logical fallacy whereby you attack the speaker instead of the argument. Right. So an ad hominem fallacy would be, someone says, I think that we should have, better food in the cafeteria, and someone says, well, you're stupid. So why would we think that? That's an ad hominem attack because it is attacking not the argument that we should need better food in the cafeteria, but it's a personal attack upon the speaker with the intention of saying, of making and this is the logical fallacy, that if the speaker is stupid, their argument is stupid, right? Not always true. Sometimes it is, but not always. So there are dozens and dozens of logical fallacies. Again, I'm going to let you watch that video, and I want you to look at that poster. You're going to see a lot, all right? But here's the intention of logical fallacies. Sometimes logical fallacies are accidental, all right? People are working hard to like make a good argument, and they put an argument together, and it doesn't quite work, and that's accidental, and that's fine. And all we need to do is say, hey, you just committed a logical fallacy there, that your logic actually doesn't add up, etc., etc. But the real reason we need to be careful about logical fallacies are when people use them knowingly, right? And this happens sometimes. Logical fallacies have the form of normal arguments. They sound like good arguments. And if we're not paying attention, all right, someone, a politician, a debater, someone with power, all right, can use logical fallacies to justify terrible, terrible things. So we always need to be careful of logical fallacies. Now, as part of this class, I almost always assign a debate, all right, that's happening in the political sphere. Right now, there's pretty much no debate. You're about the only semester that doesn't have one, so I didn't assign one this time. But, all right, because I want you to watch, and I want you to pay real close attention to how politicians of all stripes, I don't care what side of the partisan divide they're on, but politicians of all stripes, how they use logical fallacies and the other kind of damaging types of language that we're going to talk about today, how they use those, and how we should really be wary when a politician is willing to use these kind of logical fallacies knowingly, that we should be careful about voting for them. We should be careful about listening to them. So logical fallacies, watch that video, read that poster, and then one of the things you've got to sign this week is a essay by George Orwell, all right, The Politics of the English Language. And George Orwell shares my concern, all right, that language, it's not just the English language, but we're speaking English, but that language can easily be co-opted, all right, to do damaging things without us even realizing it, all right? So George Orwell was the author of Animal Farm in 1984. He was a famous critic of totalitarianism, especially kind of communist totalitarianism. And he was an advocate for democratic socialism. He was known for inventing concepts like doublespeak, Big Brother, thought police, and many more. These are all ideas, and I'm going to talk about them in a little more detail later on here, but these are all ideas that show the link between kind of language, politics, and argumentation. All right. So, doublespeak. Doublespeak is his big one. Doublespeak was really famous in his novel 1984. And here's what doublespeak is. Doublespeak is language that deliberately obscures, distorts, disguises, or reverses the meaning of words. Doublespeak can take the form of euphemisms, all right, in which case it is primarily meant to make the truth sound more palatable. All right. So, doublespeak could be, there were the debate between, undocumented immigrant and illegal alien. All right. The word illegal, all right, alien, has a very powerful political effect. All right. So, when you use it, you are attempting to activate that political effect of the word illegal and illegal alien. Right? This is why there's a big argument about whether we should call someone an undocumented immigrant or an illegal alien, because all right, these words have power. So, euphemism. All right. A euphemism is when we obscure the kind of graphic, terrible nature or meaning of a word by using quote unquote nicer language. All right. Now, sometimes this is very appropriate. All right. If someone dies, we typically say something like, "I'm so sorry I'm so sorry they passed away. I'm so sorry they left us. I'm so sorry they moved on." All right. All of these words that are intended to soften the blow. It's just, it's theoretically nicer than just going up and saying, "Sorry, someone died." Right? You say, "Sorry, someone moved on," et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes nicer language is appropriate, but sometimes nicer language hides a meaning. All right. Freedom fighter versus terrorist. All right. Freedom fighter, all right, sounds amazing. I mean, that's like what our revolutionary forefathers did 200 years ago. They were freedom fighters. They were fighting against tyranny. Versus the word terrorist. Right? Now, here's the trick. If you actually look at freedom fighters versus terrorists, they're the same thing. They're the same thing. They're doing the same thing. The only difference is the political ideology of which they follow. All right, and if you agree with, and it doesn't matter what the political philosophy is. If you agree with it, they're freedom fighters, and if you disagree with it, they're terrorists. Right? So, here's a couple of COVID-19. Has your family been affected by the coronavirus? Of course, what that means is that someone, died because of the coronavirus, because of COVID-19. So you've got these euphemisms, right, that are ways of, again, they could be legitimate ways of softening the blow, but they could be ways of minimizing the damage. When we talk in public spheres about, 500,000 people have been affected by COVID, that's death. Death is a radically different and more horrible thing than affected by. All right, so jargon. Jargon is used, words designed to talk about specific activities outside of the context of those activities. In other words, everything, every niche, every different job, everything has bits of jargon that specific culture uses to kind of talk about things. All right, business people have ROIs and blah blah blah, and like there are lots of other things. But then when you use that jargon outside of its traditional context, it doesn't work anymore, right? So, for example, a couple of years ago, the National Transportation Safety Board got in a little bit of trouble because it wrote reports, and it called, instead of labeling a plane crash, it labeled a plane crash a controlled flight into terrain, which is correct, but also minimizes drastically the kind of horror of what was happening. Controlled flight into terrain sounds like, oh, yeah, all right, that sounds normal. It doesn't sound like a big deal. Well, plane crash. So, the Defense Department also got in trouble for calling peace a permanent pre-hostility. So in other words, peacetime is a permanent time of getting ready for the next war. So, and again, COVID. We talk about jargon with COVID. You've learned a lot of jargon. You might not have realized it, but you've learned a ton of jargon in the past year about COVID and the pandemic and things like that. Flattening the curve, all right? Probably a year ago, none of us knew what that meant. We now have very strong ideas. But then also, opening the economy, right? Has for a long time meant, removing disease control measures. So when people say we need to open up the economy, they're also saying, we need to put workers in danger so that we can, buy stuff. And that is a dangerous bit of jargon. Essential workers. This is, I think, a really insidious piece of language, the essential workers, because we're calling workers essential, like people that we need, like grocery store workers and farmers and things. So we're calling them essential, which makes them sound super important. But then we're demanding that they risk their life to serve us with no additional money, with no additional support, anything. So we think that it's enough to just say they're essential and without actually, helping them. Gobbledygook. Gobbledygook is when you build a sentence that is so confusing that it doesn't mean anything at all. All right. And this is very typical. This is when you want to hide something. One way to hide it is to put it in a badly written sentence. Look at this. This is from 1972, but this is a real famous one. In 1972, Ford Motor Company sent a letter to people that bought the Mercury Montego. It had a horrible defect in which it's like the rear axle would come off, right? So here's their letter. With respect to possible mechanical deficiencies, the rear axle bearings of the cars can deteriorate. Continued driving with a failed bearing could result in disengagement of the axle shaft and adversely affect vehicle control. Yeah, if your wheels fall off, that's going to affect the control of your vehicle. So, in other words, by kind of putting in this terrible sentence and no one knowing what that means, all right, it obscures the information that they're trying to convey. Here's a real famous one. Donald, at the height of the kind of Iraq War, the Donald Rumsfeld, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, said this in a briefing. There are known knowns. There are things that we know we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know we don't know. Right? And then here's a great from the Australian government gobbledygook about COVID masks. Do I need to wear a mask? No. If you are well, a mask is not required when there is low community transmission in COVID-19. However, if you are in a situation where physical distancing is difficult, such as public transportation, you may choose to wear a mask. So, do I need to wear a mask? No, unless you're going to be around people or in public, in which case, yes. Inflated language. Inflated language is hyperbole as distraction. In other words, it's using hyperbole to kind of distract from the actual meaning of the word. There was a fire in a nuclear facility a while back, like a long time ago, and the facility labeled the fire. They didn't call it a fire; they called it rapid oxidation. So, in other words, instead of saying there was a fire event at a nuclear power plant, which is horrifying and terrible, they said there was a rapid oxidation event, which is fire, but still. And people are like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like a big deal. Fire at a nuclear facility, big deal. Here's another one, another COVID example. We're rounding the corner. With or without vaccine, they hate when I say that, but that's the way it is. We've done a phenomenal job, not just a good job, a phenomenal job, other than public relations, but that's because I have fake news. On public relations, I give myself a D. On the job itself, we take an A+. That's President Trump on September 21st. All right. That's September 21st of last year, saying we rounded a corner. Now, again, whatever your political leanings, this particular quote is kind of dangerous. To say that we are rounding a corner and doing a phenomenal job when, thousands of people are dying and hundreds of thousands of people are yet to die is, a distraction. And we need to be careful of that kind of distraction, a distraction from what actually is happening. So, every year there is an award given by NCTE, National Council of Teacher of English. It's called the Double Speak Award, all right? And it goes to the best example of double speak in the year. Winners have included Rudy Giuliani in 2018 saying that the truth isn't truth on Meet the Press. In 2020, all right, it was a China virus, all right, trying to distract from, calling it the China virus to try and distract from what the virus was and what was happening with it. So, that's it. I hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you later.